Cannabidiol, or CBD as we know it, is the part of the marijuana plant that doesn't get you high. However, it is part of the plant that many professional athletes seem to be high on.
The UFC believes CBD is the future in pain, easement, and recovery. They're putting their money where their mouth is to prove it. In a special report, Fox 5 sports reporter Vince Sapienza is here to show us how they plan to change the stigma surrounding CBD here in Las Vegas, and why the NFL may not be far behind. Vince?
Yeah, John, Christine, the UFC has always prided itself on being pioneers, going where others won't, doing what others won't. Now, as we know, the cannabis conversation has been around for years, but the CBD chatter, specifically as it relates to sports, has been more recent. And when you look back and trace to its origin, you'll find one of the biggest wins for athletes who use CBD came from a loss. And that epicenter of change happened right here in Las Vegas. UFC 202 was the best-selling pay-per-view in the company's history. Conor McGregor ended the night with his hands raised, but it was Nate Diaz who raised a few questions.
What exactly are you, just for the record, smoking?
It's CBD. It helps with healing process and inflammation, stuff like that. So you want to get these for before, after the fights, training, and make your life a better place.
I remember thinking I'm going to start getting a lot of calls from a lot of people, and I did. Caused a lot of controversy. Not many athletes were speaking openly about it at that time.
Do you remember that?
Oh God, yeah. Who doesn't? Any CBD user, member saw it that day and was just like brave.
Even though his fight had finished at the press conference, Diaz was still considered in competition, meaning he was consuming a prohibited product in CBD.
It brought about, I think, attention to a flaw in our rule. If you already have a sample from the fighter when they were competing, why does that in-competition window need to be extended? And because of what Nate did, we changed the rule. And so the rule now is the in-competition period ends when you exit that medical tent or when you provided your post-fight sample, so it kind of became known as the Nate Diaz rule.
16 months later, the World Anti-Doping Agency, or WADA, removed CBD altogether from their prohibited list, giving UFC athletes the green light to use CBD 365 days a year without restriction.
Nate did a great job of allowing other fighters to talk about something they've already been doing, right, publicly.
Jessica Ai has been fighting in the UFC since 2013. Originally from Ohio, she trains here in Las Vegas and has been a regular user of CBD since she was a little girl.
I found that when I've had hard weight cuts and I've used the CBD, I felt like I had less brain fog. I had less of that dehydration.
Jessica thinks the science is there, and so does the UFC.
It's not a craze, man. It works.
We're here to announce our deal with Aurora.
In July, the UFC announced an 8-year groundbreaking partnership with Aurora, a Canadian cannabis producer based in Edmonton. It's an agreement that will see researchers conduct clinical trials of CBD in current athletes, with the end goal of creating a line of hemp-derived topical treatments.
Until we do the studies, we won't know. So let's go find out what.
Would you rather have these guys taking pain pills, sleeping pills, things like this? Much safer, much healthier for the athletes. It's the future. We know it, we get it, we see it, and we're not afraid of things like this. The NFL, the NBL, all these guys are afraid.
While the UFC dives in head first, the NFL is still doing their homework. This past May, the NFL and NFL Players Association formed a joint pain management committee, exploring alternative outlets for players, which includes CBD.
We probably haven't focused on prevention enough.
After the announcement, I sat down with NFL Chief Medical Officer Dr. Alan Sills, who says it's still too early to tell if CBD is the key.
There's a lot of what we call anecdotal evidence, meaning people who will give personal testimonials. But in terms of looking at really well done, controlled trials, we lack a lot of that evidence.
Dr. Sills says while CBD is not specifically prohibited in the NFL, the message from team physicians to its players, stay away.
It would be possible to fail a marijuana drug test after using CBD if the product you're using happens to be contaminated with some THC.
Jeff Nowitzki has been running the UFC's anti-doping program since 2015. He says conservatively, about 75% of the 508 athletes on the UFC roster are users of CBD. And in his 4 years with the company, there have been approximately 12,000 drug tests done and only have 2 come back positive with THC.
It's no longer a hippie thing, you know, it's an athlete thing. If we want people to like it, let's educate them.
And if there is something out there that is going to, positively affect an athlete's health when it comes to brain issues, I don't think you can afford to sit back, and wait on the sidelines.
Now, while the UFC is all in, the conversation outside the octagon is getting louder. In August, recently retired Super Bowl champ Rob Gronkowski partnered with CBD Company and has become a strong voice for athletes and the use of CBD, not just in the NFL, but other pro leagues. As for the UFC, they are currently in the study and research phase with Aurora. The next phase would be to roll out testable topical creams for athletes. And we could see that happen as early as the first few months of next year.